Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the last webinar facilitated with the IOSH Environment and Waste Management Group. Today, it's been shared with the Public Services Network and jointly promoted by the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, who we try and work closely with. Before introducing Jimmy Quinn, President of IOSH, I'm going to wish everybody a happy Christmas and festive season ahead, whatever your faith, interest, or persuasion is, and hope you'll have a great time. I'll get out of the way first because many of you leave before the end. First of all, then, introduction, welcome to Jimmy Quinn, President of IOSH, who I've invited to say a few words. And I know he'd like to meet all of you and basically share some thoughts with you, being his topic of his presidential year. Thank you, Jimmy.
Many thanks, Chair, and absolutely wonderful to be here, David, and thank you so much for inviting me to your webinar today. It's very kind of you to invite me to this, because although talking about what we're going to be talking about applies to everybody in society, as you know, and as we've talked about before, part of my year this year is going to be about veterans and about mental health, and further on in the next year it'll be about young people coming into health and safety as a first career. But you know, this part here in terms of veterans mental health, some of that goes hand in hand, and especially goes hand in hand with homelessness. Not just veterans, but you know, it touches every part of our community and people in our country and worldwide. But in terms of being able to tie this up, I noticed that some statistics that I saw that the campaigner suggests that more than 3,500 homeless veterans are sleeping rough in this country, which is an astounding fact that I can't even bear to think about. And so if there's any way that your webinar today and your guest speakers and IOSH and the health and safety progression to do anything right by them would be fantastic, as well as everything else and everyone else that's touched by homelessness. So I really thank you and your group for inviting me along today, David. And also next year we're doing 2 focus groups that I've been allowed to conduct in terms of veterans. I'll get feeling a bit emotional here. Voice is sort of tying up a little bit. So in terms of veterans and mental health, we're going to be doing 2 focus groups. So I'd really like to reach out to you, Chair, for next year and hopefully get your assistance, which I know you'll jump at the chance to assist Keith Ho and Matt Jackson in getting that great body of work done. But, you know, I think this is an amazing, something amazing that we're talking about today. And again, thank you so much for allowing me just to do a brief introduction to you and your members, and fantastic luck today in this webinar, and long may it continue. David, thank you very much for your time.
Jimmy, thanks very much. This is all about passion. It's all about personal experience, and the data the stats you gave, which I hadn't seen fully in their full amount, is astounding. And I'm hoping that the recording of this webinar will go out as well, and we can share it. And again, we're really, you know, the EWMG and the members in it, we will really try and do what we can to support any initiative we're doing. It's about our society and a better place to be. I think that's the fundamental for IOSH, isn't it, Jimmy? It's a broad approach.
Absolutely, broader part as well, David. And to see that you're leading on this today with your group is absolutely fantastic. And to see Paul and Brian here today as well is absolutely brilliant. And you know, veterans, as we all know, is very close to me. And I'll admit, there's, you know, there have been 1 or 2 occasions where, you know, I found myself sleeping rough at times, not through any other, you know, anything really bad, just found in the wrong part of a Saturday night. But that was one night. I wouldn't like to think that I was doing that every single night. And the stuff that you're doing here today is just brilliant. Thanks very much, David. Brilliant.
Thanks very much, Jimmy. And if you can stay later, all the best. I know you've got to make a trip halfway around the world in the next half hour. But so Virgin has got the supersonic jet going, I can see. It's obviously working. On that note, Jimmy, I'll bring in Paul Wright and Brian Shepherdson, both IOSH members, I hasten to add, which shows that we are trying to work really closely. In effect, this really statement, I think it was Brian, you sent me an email about this, didn't you? I think it was saying you'd seen across this, could we actually talk about this? And today we've moved it, we've taken a stage forward. This is actually happening. So we've got Paul Wright, who's the Group Health and Safety Director of Biffa, who isn't too far away from where I live. He's just around the corner, I think. Just checking where Creswick's Park is, of course. And I've got Brian Shepherdson, who's the Head of Safety, Health and Quality for Operations and Collections. But you're a bit further up north, aren't you?
David, certainly that is correct. I'm in not so sunny Newcastle today, so you no doubt will guess that already by the accent, everybody on this online.
Yeah, I did spend 6 hours one overnight at Newcastle Station about 35 years ago, and it wasn't a really great place to be. And I wasn't alone there either, by the way. So on that confession and note, I'm going to mute myself, hide my video, and the floor is yours, gentlemen. What I'll ask people to do, please, if you're going to ask questions, please wait until at least half an hour into the session, because it's a very good chance Brian and Paul will cover what you're thinking about. So, gentlemen, it's over to you, and many thanks again.
Thanks, David, and to IOSH for the opportunity to talk to everyone that's joined today's webinar. And just to say also to Jimmy, all of Jimmy's thoughts then shared with everyone absolutely resonated with me. So thank you, Jimmy. So Brian and I are going to talk to you about people in and around bins. Some of you will be aware of this issue, and some of you may not be aware of this issue, which was my position on January the 7th, 2018. And on the 8th of January, I joined the waste and recycling sector, taking up my role in Biffa, having spent much of my working life in engineering and construction type sectors. And it was during my first month that I encountered for the first time the sobering matter of people using bins as a place of shelter and refuge. And of course, I'm sure we'd all agree the risks to personal safety is clear if someone is tipped into the back of a bin wagon refuse collection vehicle. So over the next hour, I'm going to provide you with some insights into this issue, and Brian then's going to take over and explain some of the initiatives and actions we have taken in Biffa, and also, and more importantly, how you can contribute to that. So we've just completed our second study into the matter of people in and around bins early this year in 2020, and the issue of people in and around bins remains as relevant and important as it did when we launched our first study and report in 2014. This is an issue that is complex and it's present all year round and requires constant vigilance. As a company at Biffa, we are committed to raising the profile of this issue in the industry. We've developed policies, we've developed procedures for widespread adoption by our fellow waste collectors and waste producers to prevent tragic and unnecessary injuries and fatalities. So our recent research was completed in 2020, as I said earlier, and it was done in collaboration with the Open University and the Chartered Institute for Waste Management. And it was well supported across the waste sector with around 60 waste collector organisations taking part in the survey. And what was really clear from the research was that this is a growing problem. The UK homeless population has significantly increased in recent years, meaning more people are at risk. 35% of waste companies discovered people sleeping in bins within the last 12 months, compared to just 21% in 2014. And exacerbating that issue, there's been a 70% increase in the number of people sleeping rough since 2014. In addition to that, this is a nationwide year-round issue. So we collect within Biffa instances where our drivers encounter coming across someone either in a bin or sleeping around in close proximity to a bin. And on average, we report between 8 to 10 individual instances that have occurred up and down the UK every month. And that trend has been consistent for the last 5 years. I must say that people sleeping in bins, it's not limited to the homeless community. There have been instances where people have taken temporary shelter in a bin after a night out. Just to move gently on, Since 2014, the industry has got better at dealing with this issue, and this is demonstrated by that 39% of waste collectors have a policy in place for identifying and doing a number of actions to see if there's anyone in a bin before that bin is tipped into the back of the wagon. In addition to that, more waste collectors provide training to their drivers and management teams on this issue, setting out, all of the practical measures that we can take to do everything that we can to identify if there is someone in the bin before it's tipped. And equally, 83% of waste collectors, ask their drivers and loaders to bang on the bins, lift the lid up, shout inside the bin, and do everything that we possibly can, and that's practically possible to check if there's anyone in. And of the people identified in bins, 93% were identified before tipping into the back of the wagon, which is an improvement on 61% in 2014. But I must say this, and this is really, really important. The findings overall do demonstrate that there is a long, long way to go, and there is a lot more to do to prevent people using bins as a place of refuge. Reinforcing this point, the study also identified that where people have been found in a bin, only 40% of those bins had a workable lock to prevent access, which is unchanged from 2014. So where do we go from here? Our study identified several improvement actions and calls for a much more deeper collaborative approach across waste producers, waste companies, homeless charities, and the general public to tackle this issue. And I know Brian is going to talk later on in this presentation and touch upon some of these specific actions. My last point that I wanted to share with you was this. I've been fortunate to go out with some of our drivers within Biffa who have actually encountered coming across a person in a bin when they've been collecting waste either in the late hours of an evening or in the early hours of the morning. And when you hear the account from the driver, it makes this issue very real. I'm sure if everyone on this call could actually shut their eyes and just imagine what it would be like to encounter someone in a bin just before you tip that bin into a wagon, what that experience would be like. All of the drivers that I've met and the traffic dispatch officers, they have a really, really good understanding of this issue and the things that we can do to help, making it clear that we have a really good base to build upon. Lastly, I've also been out on the front line with some of the outreach teams who work on behalf of charities such as St. Mungo's, and they use the Street Link reporting system, which alerts them to locations where someone is sleeping rough. And I wanted to see, I should say, sorry, we when we have a report that one of our drivers has encountered someone either sleeping in a bin or sleeping near to a bin, we report all of those instances using the Street Link system, and I know Brian will cover that later. So I wanted to see how that system actually works in practice. So I went out with some of the outreach teams who work for these homeless charities to see it firsthand. So I've been out in Swindon, I've been out in Whitechapel in London, and I can say with first-hand experience that the Street Link system, it really does work, and it connects rough sleepers to local advice and support, which is really, really good. So the homeless charities such as St. Mungo's and others up and down the country, they do an absolute tremendous job helping rough sleepers. And I think we can all contribute to that and make a positive difference by using that Street Link system. And as I said before, Brian's going to give us an insight in how we can do that. So that was it from me. It's just a very brief overview of some of the key issues and facts underpinning this sobering matter. And I'm now going to hand over to Brian, who'll cover this in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much, and great intro there. And also, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon and listening to the session we've got here. But really, before I start, it's a special thanks to IOSH for making this happen, and in particular, David Thomas and the Environmental Waste Management Group. He's absolutely right. It was just a short while ago we asked if there was an opportunity to share some of this information. And here we are today. So I'm really pleased to be given that opportunity, and it's a privilege to be here. It goes without saying that Greg Burgess in my team in Biffa was the originator of the idea. So top marks, Greg. Here it is. It's actually happening. Great idea. And really the spirit of what I'm going to be talking about today is raising awareness, because I'm sure we'll all agree, as members of IOSH and, members of the safety community, there's no secrets in safety. And really that's a hallmark of what we've been doing on this very, very, sobering subject, as we've heard speakers already talk to. So I'm just going to really give it an overview of where we are in the context of the guidance, and I'm going to take that forward in terms of what we've done as a business to create that awareness, and how we are collaborating with industry in the most general sense to raise awareness of this issue, that I truly believe we can all do something different to prevent injury to people. I will cover StreetLink, as Paul has touched on, and have their permission to share some of the material I'm going to be using today. But there will be some really tangible things that you can all do after this session just to raise awareness in your own organisations, and you personally can take action if you find yourself discovering a person who's rough sleeping in and around your area. So to set the scene, the Waste Industry Safety and Health Forum, WISH, website shown on the slide here, does, and has produced guidance on this this matter around managing access to large waste and recycling bins. But really, that sets the scene, doesn't it? This is about the action we take, which really makes a positive difference. So as Paul touched on earlier there, the context is now clear. This is not a one-off, it's not unique. And to my surprise, having just been in the waste sector just over a year, previously in housing, where social hardship and homelessness was a factor, it was really an eye-opener for me to get involved in this. And I really am passionate about promoting that awareness and getting the message out there. But if I put some numbers to that and bring it to life, 47 incidents have been recorded across our regions in the last 12 months. That is incredible. I've dealt with 2 serious incidents this calendar year already, where the risk has been realised. If we draw some comparisons into 2019, for the period of June to November, that was 64 events, where there was a person and bin incident. Contrasted with this year, you'll see a significant drop, and you may think, well, the campaign has achieved its purpose. But of course, we haven't had exactly a normal year. It's been an extraordinary year. So this year, we've had 26 reports today in this financial year, the financial year 20-21. And one of the benefits of the few that has come from the pandemic is the positive impact in accommodating people who were in fact sleeping on the streets of the UK in around the March time. So that in itself is, we've seen that in our statistics, but that doesn't take the problem away, because that's a temporary situation, as I'm sure that you will all appreciate. And we're really going into a period now between January and June from the research, which shows that 70% of the encounters do happen in this period. So the time is just so perfect to raise awareness and get the message out. We expect to see the increase, to normal levels, and with the predictions of further unemployment and, the consequential social hardships that can bring, it wouldn't be of a surprise to see an unfortunate increase in that trend. When we get into the actual operational sense, there is no one sector that stands out from the rest here. And you can see there on the right-hand side of my slide, the types of businesses that we collect from and the types of businesses which indeed encounter people in bin issues. Similarly, the containers it's not always a particular container type in a particular location. The variation is infinite. So from that point of view, the awareness level is one of our key preventative actions that we can take as a business, as a waste collector, but more importantly for colleagues and members of IOSH on this call, in your organisations as waste producers, whoever picks your waste up at the end of the day. So just moving my the toolbar out of the way there. If I can, this is what we set out to do effectively. We framed our approach under 4 key headings here, and that was, we need to make sure our processes internally were effective and robust. As a waste collector, we are, absolutely passionate about doing what we're doing, as you'll gather from this session. But our waste producers can take responsibility and do things themselves, which I'll talk to shortly. The power of social media is wonderful, and getting the message out there, using the channels that we have now available to us, enables quick messaging, very pointed, with a variety of media content, including videos and printed material. So that's been wonderful to support this program. But like all good safety programs, we need to make sure, is what we said we would do actually happening on the ground? So there is the 4th phase of that is an assurance program to make sure, we said we do, and we give ourselves confidence that that is in fact happening. So bringing that to life, what does effective and robust processes mean? You go with a nice statement, but for us that meant improved awareness at the front line, and that awareness is amongst not only our drivers but our traffic management people as well, and extending that across our sales teams, because our sales teams are the people who engage with a customer at the beginning of a relationship and during a relationship, and we can leverage into that relationship to raise awareness. We do collect data, as Paul touched on, in terms of the drivers will report an incident, and that will be collated monthly, certainly by Chris Jones, a guy in my team who does a great job on that, and we see the trend. But really, it's about sharing that data. That data is meaningless in its own right. It's got to be shared, and extending that to customers who we see have more than average incidents is really important. Within our customer communication channels, what do I mean by that? That means at the beginning of a customer relationship, at tender stage, including information, we can and believe this adds social value to the services that we bring to customers. And we are promoting this actively through our municipal division and our industrial and commercial division too. And then the core of that is our customer service departments who maintain those relationships with the customers. This is really key, and this is where, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening in from other industries, you can really take positive action after today. As a waste producer, we've got information, and I'll touch on where you can find that. It's publicly available now as we speak. You can download information, and there's short videos there which we've produced, and we will provide feedback if you indeed are one of our customers on any hotspot areas that we discover during the course of the operation. The social media campaigns I've touched on. The pleasure and privilege of doing this session today through IOSH, first and foremost, speaking to everybody on this session is a great opportunity to get the message out. But of course, Twitter and LinkedIn are the tools of the trade nowadays, and you'll see we've been rather active on there in recent weeks, getting the message out. The assurance piece, plan, do, check, act. We've got, this is the check bit really of that process, and what we're doing here is we will be doing is making sure that the training we've been delivering out, the refresher training that's gone out there, has actually made a difference, and it's really clear to people as to what they can do. It's not complex. These are really simple steps that our people can take, but equally the simple steps that customers and waste producers can take as well. So those customer conversations, to include people in bins, checks, risk awareness, are absolutely key. So what does that look like in the round? The customer posters, they've gone out in October, and that, because of our customer base being in the thousands, that has been rolled out by the end of this financial year, so effectively the end of March. There is a customer video on our website now, biffa.co.uk, people in bins. If you go to that website, you'll find this material. And of course, the internal communications have taken the form of our internal know-how system, a training system. OBI and Beta are an app-based piece of technology that we have internally. So effectively, the messages in the person's hand within our business, and of course, social media as well has been a great tool in doing that. So on the next slide, what I've got is a short extract from the customer video that we've got published currently on the website, and it's accessible for all to download in full version and the short versions as well. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to go to the next slide after this one and play that. So the customer poster is there on the website, and really the key messages are here. Keep your bins safe, keep them locked where possible, store in a well-lit, secure area, and if you have a suspicion as a business that people are using that container as a place of refuge to sleep, please report it. And I'm going to come on to how you can report it shortly when we talk about StreetLink. What to look out for? Well, there are some telltale signs, and that is, things like a pallet against the side of a bin, which serves as a step up to get into the bin. Open lids, normally closed, and if the waste has been dispersed from the bin, that would normally be a telltale sign there as well. So, the poster really serves as a reminder. And where would you put the poster? You would put it in staff rooms, crew rooms, where the people who actually deposit waste in the container would see it. It's frontline awareness, which is key to the success of this campaign. The video that I'm just going to show now is 2 minutes, and it'll just give you a flavour as to some of the messaging that we've been using. And I'm pleased to say that that we've pulled on our operational colleagues to participate in that and give first-hand accounts of incidents that they've come across. So I shall pause now and just play the video, and then I'll pick up when this video is finished.
People are routinely seeking refuge, shelter and sleeping in and around waste containers and exposing themselves to risk of serious injury and death. Research by Biffa with the Open University and partner organisations indicated increasing numbers of rough sleepers and called for broader awareness of the dangers.
I've been at Biffa for more than 10 years now, and the one incident I remember involving a person in bin involved a national supermarket chain in Halifax. The bin was located in a locked compound with an electric gate and razor wire around the walls. The store manager and myself were very surprised that somebody was managing to sleep in the bin. The driver was very shocked. This is why you have to check every single bin at every single site, because you never know when somebody could be in a bin.
We recognise that our customers have a vital role to play to prevent incidents relating to people in bins, and without their help, it is unlikely that an event such as this will stop. Please follow these simple steps. Raise awareness amongst your staff of the risk of people in bins. Store any waste containers in a secure location with lids fastened and, where appropriate, locked when not in use or full of waste ready for collection. Where this is not possible, please make regular checks on your waste storage location to ensure that it is secure and any unauthorised people are prevented from accessing waste containers. Remember, we have a duty of care to protect the lives of anyone that can be affected by what we do. This includes the storing, securing and collection of waste. Please let us do all we can to minimise the risks from people sleeping in bins and best ensure we all remain safer together.
Okay, the video you would have seen there some footage of a person getting out of a container. The videos that we have produced do contain actual footage, which is picked up of our CCTV on our vehicles, and sadly they are real events. where the person has been lucky to get out of the bin before it was tipped. So at this point, where do we go from here? A customer case study will be published in the new year. 100% of our customer communications need to be completed. We have, tens of thousands of customers, and rather than just an email, another email, we're taking an extra set of steps to make sure customers get the message, and indeed it gets to the right place within their organization, so it results in action. You will see continued social media posts, because we believe that that is a great awareness raising tool, and to share some of the material that we've got here. And of course, the festive season is upon us, and that Christmas awareness is particularly poignant at this time of year, given what we're talking about today. In the new year, in 2021, we will get an update from one of our customers and a depot that's had first-hand experience, just really bringing this to life. It does perhaps at first seem, a distant risk, but it's a very real risk for people in our business and our customers. And it gives me great pleasure to now be able to talk about StreetLink. Paul touched on the partnership that we have with StreetLink, and Gareth Thomas from StreetLink, who has shared these slides with me, couldn't be here to present them in person, so I've got that opportunity right now. So let me tell you a little bit about StreetLink. StreetLink are really forthright to say that this is a significant problem in UK. You can see the numbers on screen here. 320,000 people homeless at some point in a year. That is incredible and so sad. Rough sleeping numbers are up by 140% from 2010. So in the last 10 years, that is a significant increase. There are government commitments to address rough sleeping, and we are very supportive of anything that we can do to support that. There is investment in this topic, and part of that plan is in fact the creation and the existence of StreetLink, which is run by Homeless Link in St Mungo's. So what does StreetLink do? They are a national membership organisation for the homeless charities in England. They have a vision to end homelessness, as is absolutely valid. And really their front line is a combination of frontline practice and some pretty meaty policies, and a key focus of knowledge on homelessness in England. So effectively, Homeless Link run StreetLink. And where does StreetLink fit in? You're probably thinking right now. So StreetLink is it's aimed at members of the public. You and I on this session today, who see people sleeping on the streets and just simply don't know what to do. Do you walk past, or can you do something? Well, you can do something, and StreetLink is the means by which you can do it. So StreetLink, if you make a report through StreetLink, through the app, downloadable from the app stores, as all the the approved apps are, connects the rough sleeper's location with the local services. There is a perception, and this was interesting when we communicated internally earlier this year, that it was seen as like an emergency service. And you go, well, yeah, you perhaps think you would get a quick response, but actually it's an outreach service that is in some cases having to make contact, find people, and create relationships to be able to support people who may not be receptive to that support at the first instance. So relationships and the like need to be built. So that relationship and partnering between Homeless Link and St Mungo's has effectively created this organisation. It has a 24/7 phone line, which the details are at the end of this session, and covers all of England and Wales. And Jimmy, not to leave you out in Scotland, there is an equivalent organisation, Simon Scotland, who we've linked up with in Scotland, just to make sure that we have full UK coverage. So that is absolutely vital and important. So the referral service goes out to all 348 local authorities. So that really in itself is quite an extensive operation. And a little bit of history here. It's been around for a while, which is a great thing, and doing some great stuff with over 370,000 alerts, growing at 40% per annum. So the supporter base of, at the moment, 230,000 members of the public have signed up. So my challenge to you today, be number 230,001 and 2 and 3, because the more people who sign up, the more effective the service can become. The outcomes are clear where StreetLink has had some involvement, and those outcomes are accommodating people in a safer place to live, which is definitely not on the streets. Like any charity, StreetLink relies on public support, donations and volunteers, as well as government funding. And in a short while, I'm going to play a video which is going to do a far better job than I at actually bringing StreetLink to life as to what they do day in, day out and how it operates. So this is an absolutely incredible statistic. 60% of the people recorded as sleeping rough in London between 17 and 18 were new people sleeping on the streets. So these are people who, whatever the circumstances of life, have ended up in a very, very vulnerable situation. The vast majority, over half, were seen only once, while 6% were seen more than 10 times. And you go, so that broad range of people that are in that vulnerable group is quite incredible. So what can you do? The app that I've talked to, report the incident through the app. That goes through to StreetLink, but what they need is the exact location, because without that, it's nearly impossible to find the person. An alert is then sent to the outreach team, and they will go and look for that person, and that can take up to 1 to 3 nights. And feedback is all important, and this was a key message from our drivers, that well, I report via StreetLink, but nothing ever comes back. And we did find out we need to request feedback because the volumes of information that they're processing are quite incredible. Okay, so I'm just now going to play a short video produced by StreetLink, which will tell you and show exactly how they operate. And I think the most sobering piece for this short clip, when I first saw it, was the first-hand accounts of some homeless people who had been helped by StreetLink. So let me show you this video.
I was in a 1-bedroom flat. I got into a lot of rent arrears. The situation was going from bad to worse, and the landlord just had enough and evicted me. Well, I slept rough for the first time in my life. Honestly, I did not know how to get off the streets at that time.
I think probably about the 3rd night that I thought, I don't think I can do this anymore. I mean, what am I doing on the streets, and why isn't no one helping me?
You want to help people, you want to make a difference, and giving somebody food or change, you don't know what difference that's going to make. And I was actually speaking to my friend about it, and she said that she had used the StreetLink app. So I saw somebody when I was walking down the road late at night, and they were sleeping on the street, and so I noted where they were and put through a referral on the app.
If you see someone rough sleeping at night, you can let us know there and then by using our mobile app, or you can wait until you get home by using our website. The types of information that we're looking for is the location of where that person is, the time that they've been seen bedded down, and any other information that we can gather that will help kind of distinguish who that person might be. We'll then send that on to a local outreach team or local service so they can begin to try and offer that initial steps of support away from the streets.
We'll come in the office, we'll look at what referrals are applicable to our area. We'll go to these locations. Hopefully the actual referral is specific enough for us to go to the exact location. Some people we find we are able to help on the night immediately. Other people take a longer process, and that's where we fall back onto a befriending type of relationship. We are there when people need to change or to look at their needs, and whether it's housing, look at their mental health, maybe substance misuse. We are that catalyst, that support network that helps people to move on to that next stage.
Once a person is identified by the outreach team, they can be assisted in a number of ways. It might be via a referral to a night shelter, an assessment centre, or from working with them directly from the streets. For rough sleepers, it's not always a straightforward linear process from coming from the streets into accommodation. Oftentimes, rough sleepers need to address a multitude of other things which are happening in their lives and which have often contributed to their sleeping on the street in the first place. So our role is to help people address all of those things so that they can sustain accommodation in the long term.
People just walk past, and some people walk past and want to help but have no idea what to do. But this kind of app would help people.
If I ever met the person that did refer me to StreetLink, the first thing I would do is walk up to them and give them a hug and say thank you. Because yeah, they really did help me out a lot.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The detail is on that slide that will be shared afterwards in terms of where you can access the StreetLink data, in terms of the contact details and other means of contact. So before I close and hand back to David, 4 things are the summary of my message. Share this message, please, because the more people who understand the risk and are aware of it, the wider we can get out there the materials that you can access on our website. Please do so. They are free to download. No catch, nothing. Just go there, share the posters, and put them up in your workplaces if you can. Equally, share the video. It's just a short piece of information on what you can do to make a difference. And last but not least, of course, the StreetLink app is there to be used by everybody. And really, that's the tool that we can, download to our phone. And, instead of becoming that bystander who walks past the homeless person, we can actively do something positive to help that person. This is really all in the spirit of, making sure that we minimize the risk of people entering waste containers and the consequences that can happen from that. Thank you very much for listening to Paul and I. It's been a pleasure having this session. I'm going to hand back to David now, who is going to coordinate Q&A. David, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brian. Paul, if you want to unmute and unmask as well, we can see you as well. Yeah, brilliant. I don't know what else to say. I think the questions will cover it. I'd like to start with more of a high-level thought. And as a general concept from your engagement with the homelessness sector, people who manage it, is how do you think that the laws in some areas now about fining homelessness people has made it worse? People are wanting to hide somewhere, and like a bin is an extra thing. Do you think that's probably exasperated it? The on-the-spot fines for being homeless, which is really, I've never understood the logic in that. Do you think it makes it worse?
I think it can exacerbate the problem. And speaking to StreetLink, it gave me some real insights, in addition to those that Paul's been able to share about, the reality of life on the streets. And more often than not, people are hiding for various reasons, the punitive that you've touched on there, David, but street life can be a violent place. And, to hide out of the way of trouble, it's a secure, one phrase I'll always remember, a bin is a secure place in which they can live with their belongings, because theft from people on the streets occurs, sadly. So from a personal safety point of view, it's seen as a safe place, but contrary is the risk that when that bin's emptied, it's not a safe place, of course. Paul, I don't know if you would like to add anything from your personal experiences with the outreach teams there.
Yeah, I would echo that. My diagnosis, or rather than diagnosis, but my understanding of the situation is that it's really complex. There are so many different reasons why a person finds themselves on the street, and I saw that firsthand when I went out to Swindon with the local charity around there. And you know, we engaged with probably 30 individuals that morning, and the outreach team, and we call that they go by the name of Walking Angels because of the job that they do. And they were able to share with me the story behind each one of the 13 individuals, because they had to befriend them or befriended them in order to have that engagement. And, you know, as I said, that there are so many different reasons why people have found themselves on the street. It's hard to kind of pin the responsibility of why we're in this situation on one thing. So, yeah, those would be my thoughts, David.
I mean, a thought I've got, and this is an open thought for people to take away maybe, because I think those who have contacts in local authorities, I think, especially those with policy and planning, have got a role to play. COVID-19, I think, it is a change. Business has a change. I would expect there to be less need for office and office spaces. And in the town where I live, which is Aylesbury, there's an office block in the town centre. If you know Aylesbury, anybody, Paul, you might have seen it.
Yeah,
it's on what they call it's near where the old railway station that Beeching ripped up years ago. It's a building been there empty for over 20 years. The owners are in Canada. It's a tax break and it sits there. It will never be used as an office block. And you're just thinking that, you know, that we could probably take 100 people homeless. I know it's not just finding some people to stay. It's the support around why they're where they are. But I think there's an opportunity now using empty office space maybe as a safe area and a safe space to be. I think there's an opportunity. I'd like to think planners can start and councils can work holistically together with charities.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that, David. Again, I go back to the Swindon example. I know when I met with the CEO for the homeless charity, he was investigating what initiatives are in operation in other countries and how they tackle, you know, the sobering matter of homelessness. And I know they were putting proposals together to do something similar like that, what you've just been saying there, David, how we can utilise spaces that are not being used and almost create, you know, great facilities where people who haven't got anywhere to go can go and, you know, reside in places like that. So I know there are initiatives in planning and probably in operation here in the UK, you know, based on examples that have been tried and tested in other parts of the world.
I hope there's people from the public sector network in here as well that can take that message back to their housing colleagues and planning colleagues. Yeah. It's about working seamlessly together. Some more of the questions that have come up, actually, a gentleman, Nicholas, has raised a quite valid statement. I think it's not just about an issue about unauthorised access to unlocked bin. Such is also an arson risk, especially if not located in a fenced and locked bin compound. Do the panelists agree?
Absolutely. You know, it's within the WISH guidance, which Brian talked about earlier, which has been around since 2010, but also in our recommendations within our recent research. You know, we really do reinforce positively, you know, for waste producers to make sure that their bins are stored, you know, in really secure areas, you know, they're well lit, use the locks, etc. Because obviously, you know, we do know that people can use them as a place of refuge, but also the contents of those bins, you know, can be hazards in themselves. So to the person that raised that, yeah, I would agree with that. It's a fair point. Brian? Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, waste bin fires are, you know, in themselves a risk, and you know, there's a double benefit from securing the container and keeping it in that place that we've just talked to. Keeps it safe from that risk of arson, but of course, you know, prevents access as well. So absolutely, there are multiple benefits of taking some simple steps there.
gentleman called, is a gentleman, I think, I'm about to preempt the name, Asim. Are these only for people? What about pets, cats, dogs, and others? We are a nation of pet lovers, of course, aren't we? We prefer pets to people very often. But yes, there are videos of people sticking cats in bins, aren't there? Some quite horrible things people do. Any thought? You guys share any thoughts on that? It's not just, but that's wheel bins as well, isn't it? Little 2-wheel wheel bins. You can put a cat or a dog in. It's.
I think indeed, David, it's a sad reality that, you know, a prank, as that would be, a very sad prank, can occur and go wrong. What we do is encourage our drivers to look inside of the bin before they empty it. You know, this is in the commercial waste collections predominantly, but you can only see so much. There's a lot of space inside of those bins, and that's compacted. So, you know, by taking those simple steps, shake the bin, kick the bin, look inside, lifting the lid, you know, hopefully we would detect any living movement in there, let's say, if that was the case.
I mean, a story I'm going to share. When I was at Aylesbury Vale, we did a number of health and safety videos for the industry. They're still available, I think, with a gentleman at No Going Back Productions in Market Harbour. And one of the scenes in there is at a landfill site. In the background, there are people with yellow coats on, or police, because they're looking for body parts on the landfill. You know, people use bins and the waste as a way to dispose of things as well. And it's back to this, another question of Tim, is how often are waste containers subject to inspections and checked for serviceability? And what anti-tamper and locking systems are there, or are there? So,
very poignant question. And, you know, the locking mechanisms on bins are relatively simple. There have been initiatives in industry for human detectors, let's say, in bins, which we've trialed. But the conclusion thus far is that, you know, the basics are the best, really, in terms of simply securing it and locking it. However, what we've got to do is remain restless and say, right, what is being done by manufacturers of containers, and what innovations may exist to improve that. So just this week, Greg Burgess, who I mentioned earlier, who works in the safety team at Biffa, he is visiting one of our manufacturers with the operations guys who have the relationship with the manufacturer to explore what we can do further in collaboration and partnership to improve container safety. So that restlessness is important. We shouldn't just accept that what we've done up to now is right and good enough. We should keep pushing forwards.
I think in parallel with that as well, Brian, you know, waste producers have the opportunity to check their bin, you know, every time they're, you know, putting stuff in it. And, you know, if the bin's not working correctly, as it, you know, if the wheels are broken, it's not moving, you know, the locks no longer working, etc., then of course, you know, contact your waste collector so you can get your bin replaced, etc. And obviously our drivers will report if there's any issues with the bin themselves. So those bins are getting emptied either on a daily, weekly basis. So that will you know, ensure if there are any fundamental significant issues with that bin, that will get reported back to the depot, and arrangements will be made to change that bin if that's the necessary action.
And just to remind people who might live, I mean, our membership covers the whole world. It covers people in different parts of the UK. And living in rural southeast England, we're used to a wheel bin, but people forget that we have areas where there's flats in the cities mainly. They can be private flats as well as housing association or local authority flats. You know, there are trade bins, there are 4-wheel bins that what we consider a trade bin is used as a domestic bin. So there are areas where people are resident as well, around there as well. So it's, and you can have private landlords and private companies as well have to manage it as well. So the engagement required is on quite a macro scale, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that is, you know, why it's not just limited to one particular activity. So commercial waste bins are perhaps the primary focus, but in that, if you like, municipal domestic setting, it's equally important because of those communal bins in, you know, the growing number of flats, apartments, etc. in and around neighbourhoods. So, you know, it applies equally on both sides. And indeed, our collection crews have experienced people in what you would basically consider to be a domestic household 240 litre bin, would you believe? At 6'4", I find it hard to think how I could even begin to fit in, but that is a direct report from an operational team.
If you can sleep on the back seat of a Mini, you can sleep in a bin.
It's,
and that's what I was going to try and prove that. Please don't try and prove it. Don't try this one at home later.
Yeah.
Paul has asked a question about your report, and has the Trade Association agreed to make this reportable to get a national picture? But basically, how widely spread is the report you're talking about? Has that gone around the whole sector?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw that. So our survey went out to you know, to all waste operators, waste collectors, you know, across the UK. So it went through you know, various professional bodies like the Environmental Services Association, CIWM, members of WISH, which is the Waste Industry Safety Forum. So it went everywhere. There was nowhere else it could have gone. So we're satisfied we got a good you know, data set that we based it upon. But yeah, the other thought I had provoked by that question is, you know, every year, like most professional bodies, we provide information on the number of lost time accidents and hypos and that we have. But it might be that we can suggest, you know, collecting or making it sort of mandatory that waste collectors provide on an annual basis number of encounters with coming across people in a bin. So that was a good question that I thought.
Very quickly about the Scottish connection. Both Stuart and Kim have asked for the connection for StreetLink, the StreetLink organisation in Scotland. Any chance, before we send the PDF around, any chance of maybe doing a link at the bottom of the presentation, please, and when it's circulated on the EWMG website, everyone can access it, please.
David, indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Daniel's asked a question. He never thought about this previously. As a health and safety advisor for a council, we pass this information on. The whole concept of health and safety advisors and what you really do, what an advisor is. We're internal consultants covering a wide range of things. So, Daniel, don't be afraid to engage with these things. I think we have too many silos in professions as well. Ron's made the comment. Thanks, Ron. The session should be going out to all IOSH members at all levels. It's eye-opening. It is. We did circulate this to around about 16,000 IOSH members today, which we always do with EWMG and the Public Services Network. It is being recorded, Ron, and what I'd ask you to do, please share it, and because and we will share it and communicate the video on the LinkedIn and on our website. So hopefully that will then communicate that around further. Flavio's made the comment that local authority economic development teams already integrated use of empty buildings, especially for social housing in my patch, Kent in tier 3, unfortunately. Yes. Malik, if by mistake a death happens to a homeless, who is responsible for compensating his family, for example, or their family, for example? To be honest, that's really going outside the scope of where I think we are. But any thoughts? I'll change the question. If there's a death involved, death happens, who else is involved? Which other stakeholders get involved? And how disruptive is it when a body is found? That, I think, is a more pertinent question.
Well, it's an absolute tragedy, isn't it? If you know, if and when that happens, and of course, you know, the police and various authorities are involved in that. And you know, if it's associated to you know, a waste collection activity, then you know, I'm sure I speak for many waste collectors. You know, it's taken very extremely seriously, and any opportunity to learn from that is taken very clearly as well.
And I think we shouldn't you know, finish answering that question without the point of the driver and you know, the impact upon our people who are just simply at work, and the psychological and mental health impacts of having been unknowingly, in some cases, been involved in that type of incident is huge. And you know, that effect on them personally and their families is is very significant from my experience, and we have seen that firsthand, unfortunately, where that human cost is very high. So, an incident is absolutely tragic. It's very significant, but has a number of consequences as well, David.
I mean, and Anthony's asked a question. As a health and safety enforcement officer for a local authority, has the HSE been informed about this? And he then talks about awareness and inspectors. It's worth noting that the WISH forum, it has the HSE engaged and they used to facilitate it and now engaged with it. So this will be communicated from the head of HSE manufacturing and the appropriate sector in down to inspectors as well. So this has got full sign up throughout the whole sector. Is that fair to say, Paul and Brian?
Yeah, so we have a really good working relationship with the HSE inspectors assigned to the waste and recycling sector, and of course, we engage with them during the planning of this research, the execution of this research, and afterwards. So yes, they're not aware of it. They are engaged with it, and I think what we've got to do now is relentlessly keep raising the profile of this issue, and every bit of progress that we make, celebrate it. But after we've took a day of celebrating it, the following day, we need to go again and see where we can make some more marginal gain improvements.
Brilliant. A question up here on enforcement from Dave West. If it's the same Dave West, I think, good afternoon. When are the HSE going to look at prosecuting the business owner for not securing the bin as done in other countries? People in bins in New York is unknown, and they prosecute any business leaving bins open. Wow, is that just any discussion about this you've come across with WISH and HSE?
Well, I think firstly, I'd like to say hello to Dave West. If it's the Dave West, I think it is. Hi, Dave.
If it's not, then sorry, Dave.
But sorry, Dave. But hello. Otherwise, I think obviously that's a question for the health and safety executive to answer. And I'm sure that there's some positive contribution that could be made that would come from that if that was the case, but it's something that's obviously got to go through consultation to really understand how that sort of thing would work in practice. Brian, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree. And what was interesting when we looked at the arrangements in Scotland was in some of the Scottish cities, leaving bins out is prohibited because it affects the appearance of the local area. Hence, in those cities, it didn't have as much prominence as a problem. But that's a local authority driven, or a city council in that case, driven initiative for other reasons, but had spin-off benefits to keep the bins in secure locations out of sight and out of mind. So, there are various policy provisions that can be deployed by various stakeholders to, reduce the risk, either directly or indirectly. And we're seeing that, and hence the breadth of this whole issue.
Thanks. If it's Barry here, is this Barry from Wakefield, or was Wakefield? Please drop a note if it is. We have included the control measures in our risk assessments, but do you agree it's good to follow up with monitoring? Also, the Bartek on-board system is a good way to include the information around sleeping in bins location. I mean, monitoring's by default is always needed, essential, but I think we're talking about eyes and ears here. I think it's more a broader eyes and ears. This whole message. It's not just the waste collection people. This whole subject is about all agencies working together with all areas. And Absolutely. It is Barry from Wakefield. Hi, Barry.
I think the sum of the parts. Is what we really want here. It starts with waste producers. So, make sure your bin's in the right location, secure, well lit, etc. But also, monitor for signs of people using your bin as a place of refuge. So, pallets stacked up at the side of it, which is effectively a ladder into the bin. So we've seen that. That's usually typical hallmarks of people using the bin. And if you think, if you've got an inkling that someone's using your bin as a place of refuge, then, watch that during the night to see if anyone's actually using it. And, that's where StreetLink then comes in. and take other measures, actions, etc., to deter people from using your bin as a place of refuge. And then as waste collectors, Brian talked before about what we do at Biffa, and I know a lot of waste collectors do something very similar. But where there are gaps in your arrangements, then obviously there's things that you can do to stop that. And then as a member of the general public, the street link system again, we heard from the lady there where it's been used to good effect. And that's something that we can all do. And I saw some of the participants have already downloaded the StreetLink app during this presentation. So they are 231 and 1001. So that's really, really good.
Great. We have last three questions very quickly. I will compress them into two. First of all, James asked about the provision of heat detection goggles. Has that ever been discussed or thought given to that?
Detection goggles.
The answer is probably no from that, because the way that there's the thought that would be off the tongue if it was. I can see issues about maintenance, looking after them in care, etc. So I don't think it's happening anywhere, and maybe some thought how that could work. But the amount of PPE bin men, waste collectors wear, I do wonder if that's not for me. That's for research for another day. That maybe.
Indeed.
Noted.
Very much good food for thought on that.
We're not, James, we're not ignoring your question. And if you want to do some research and do a presentation on it, of course, then here, but it's a serious, what other tools and equipment can be used for using CCTV. It's how can we actually, again, minimize that level of risk? I think that's the key message. Yeah. And if we're not, then what can we do? What creative thinking can we do? Are you happy with that, James, as a question? I hope he's still there, can answer that one. Craig's answered in two interesting questions. And I think one's going on to the other one about, he said, first of all, what's the best way to approach someone found in the bin? And then what happens if you meet someone and they're a bit hostile and don't want to leave? I mean, I was always told never advocate confrontation. And it's back to this, make an inquiry, are they still alive? And at whichever point you take it away, maybe, if get on the phone to the office and take it from there, I think.
Indeed, that is entirely right, David. That the steer we give to our drivers is that is a potential confrontational situation. Get it back in the cab of the vehicle and report it from there, because those circumstances are unique. And the person's view of being disturbed may not be positive, really. Whereas the driver will be very keen to help. That person inside the container may not want that help, or indeed that disturbance, or be intoxicated, or a combination of both. So there are multiple factors at play in those situations, but we've got to protect our people at the same time, of course.
And I say Brian's followed up with a comment about in the past he's had issues that there was occasionally or quite often a problem, a delay with the reports and the action, so people have moved on.
Just on that, just on that, David, I just saw Brian's response there then. What's really good then in that situation is if Brian contacts the local outreach team, that he should be able to get either through contacting the local authority or the local homeless charity, and actually get the outreach team to either come to site or go out with them, so that you can see firsthand that those reports that drivers are making are getting acted upon. And then you can give that feedback back to the driver community, so that they see actually it's well worth investing my time in reporting these things because action is being taken. So I've done that, and I did that with the Swindon example, as I mentioned before.
Brilliant. So many thanks, Brian and Paul, for a really, really interesting and thoughtful presentation. I hope people take this away. It's great they're downloading the apps. Please share the recording of this with your colleagues and with friends. And you'll find Paul and Brian on LinkedIn and various things. If you want to bang them a message on this, I'm sure they'll accept it and put a note back. This is a real thing that IOSH obviously is looking to support the waste industry in going forward. So that point, that's the last session before Christmas. I'm going to wish you everyone a great Christmas and New Year. Please don't become a homeless person over Christmas and New Year, because there are domestic issues and confrontations that happen. So we're going through a tight period. Please look after each other. Please stay good. And if anyone's got anything else to add, we're going to be very unsocial and just cut the leave thing and we all disappear and do our own things. So thanks again very much, gentlemen. All the best. Thanks, Ben, in the background, and take care and see you all next year. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.